welcome to meeting number 22 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Industry and Technology. I'd like to apologise to the witnesses here today for our delay. We had some votes in the House that held us back, but thank you for your patience. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the Committee on Friday, April 8, 2022, the Committee is meeting to study small and medium-sized enterprises and competition. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25, 2021. Members are attending in person or in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. We're delighted to have you here before the committee. Witnesses, we have Ritesh Kotak, who's a technology entrepreneur and strategist. We have Yelena Larkin, Associate Professor of Finance, York University. Dana Oborn, Vice President, Strategy and Advocacy. She's back with us with the right equipment today.
CEO of Driving Change Automotive Group. We have Thompson Okanagan Tourism Association, represented by Mr. Michael J. Ballingal, Vice President. And we have from the Windsor-Essex Regional Chamber of Commerce, Rakesh Naidu, Director General. So thank you all for being here. Without further ado, we're going to start with Ritesh Kotak for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. Thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts. My name is Ritesh Kotak, and my work is focused on cybersecurity, privacy, and digital transformation. I hold an MBA and recently completed my JD, wherein I had the privilege to intern at the Samuelson Glushko Canadian Internet Policy and Public Interest Clinic. In addition, I frequently contribute to media on tech and cybersecurity segments. I would like to highlight a few areas which impact our country's ability to compete, especially with regard to small and medium-sized businesses, SMBs, and I'll aim to provide the committee with recommendations on how to address these areas through policy and legislation. The core of my recommendations involves the need to create a small business hub, which is a one-stop shop for entrepreneurs who seek support and access to government entities. The pandemic has highlighted the need to leverage new digital tools. I'm sure that most of you have personal and/or professional social media accounts. But have you ever thought about what would you do if you lost access to those accounts? Imagine that you become a victim of a cyber attack. Your accounts get defaced with content that violates the platform's community standards, and now you're not only locked out of your Facebook account, but also Instagram and WhatsApp. In December, I gave an interview to CBC's Go Public segment on this very topic, where SMBs were hacked, defaced, and spent months trying to unsuccessfully recover their accounts. It took a request by the media to finally have these accounts recovered. Not only were they hacked, but business accounts were defaced with sexually explicit material or terroristic imagery. The victims believed that they were phished. Essentially, they clicked on a fake link and provided their login credentials and then subsequently had their accounts compromised. So they go through the process with Facebook to recover their hacked account. The portal is not easy to navigate. There's no contact number or email address. Even if the account is recovered, it is still suspended because the hacked imagery violated the community standards, even though it wasn't the user's fault. Since conducting that interview, I've been inundated from coast to coast with small business owners who have been going through this nightmare for months and have been unsuccessful in recovering their accounts as a result. Their business have suffered, not to mention the stress this has caused on them. When one of these victims complained in writing to the Office of the Privacy Commissioner, the response received was, since this account was hacked, they need to contact their local police department. The police stated that there was nothing that they can do and recovery of the account was between the user and the platform. The police's mandate is to find the hackers, not restore the victim's account. When the victim contacted Facebook Canada, they replied several weeks later, saying that the user must contact Facebook HQ in the US. It has been months and no replies have come from Facebook HQ. There's no clear recourse or avenue for support. I'm sure that there are many businesses in this exact situation. If we are going to be competitive, especially in the new digital economy, we need better mechanisms to help SMBs. Victims are re-victimized by the process and are extremely vulnerable. Many turn to expensive online tools and consultants who charge thousands of dollars but are unsuccessful. If I lose access to my bank account, I can go to the branch and verify my identity and recover access, but the same cannot be said for these platforms. We need mechanisms to protect consumers and mandate these platforms to make it simpler for SMBs to recover their accounts to get back to business. Every day the page is offline is money that the business loses. These experiences highlight the need, as I noted earlier, to create a small business hub. My parents are small business owners in the food manufacturing sector, and when the pandemic hit, they, along with numerous businesses, had to pivot their operations online. They didn't have deep pockets and access to IT departments. Many SMBs lack these resources and expertise compared to large commercial organizations. Put yourself in their shoes, competing with major retailers online. Major corporations have volume and they can offer consumers free shipping. Your cost as an SMB is significantly higher. They have experts that assist in meeting complex regulatory requirements, such as compliance with product labeling. In comparison, if a small business was to seek compliance or advice, they would naturally contact the Food Inspection Agency for assistance, which often, even frequently, proves inadequate. The only options are to risk it or hire expensive consultants. We need a fundamental shift from a reactive enforcement model to a proactive support model. We need a small business hub which assists in addressing this. I know my time is expiring, and I look forward to your questions about potential solutions to solve these issues and grow Canada's competitiveness. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kotak. We'll now move to Professor Larkin for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation to attend this meeting and the opportunity to speak today in front of the committee members. My name is Dr. Helena Larkin, and I'm an associate professor of finance at the Schulich School of Business at York University. I study issues related to product market structure and industry concentration through the lenses of academic research in corporate finance. This statement is an integration of my own research work on the topic of concentration, as well as academic work by my fellow finance and economic researchers. Corporate finance research focuses primarily on publicly traded firms, which are obviously very different from SMEs on multiple aspects. However, I believe that the analysis of public firms, which are both industry leaders and also the largest players in the overall economy, can be of interest to this committee as it helps better understand the overall economic environment within which SMEs operate these days. My main focus is the declining nature of Canadian business dynamism as it is reflected in the universe of publicly traded Canadian firms. The number of firms listed on TSX that are not set as an investment vehicle, which is excluding mutual funds, closed-end funds, and so on, has dropped by around 30% since its peak in 2008, whereas the remaining firms have grown older and also bigger. Importantly, the growth size has been skewed, so that large firms have grown at a much steeper rate. For example, the inflation-adjusted market cap of firms in the top quartile of size distribution has swelled from $250 million in 2008 to almost $1 billion in 2016. The outbreak of pandemics has not reversed these trends. While the number of publicly traded firms on TSX has changed little, the average firm value has grown by another 30% between 2019 and 2021. Other important trends which have been characterizing Canadian financial markets in the past 2 decades include low entry rate through IPOs, or the process through which a private firm becomes publicly traded, and high levels of exits through mergers and acquisitions. Combined, these trends signal a structural change. Existing research based on international data demonstrates that concentrated stock markets are associated with less efficient capital allocation, sluggish innovation activity, and slower overall economic growth. I have tested the validity of this argument within the Canadian economy and found consistent results. Canadian firms operate in industries with more concentrated market cap distribution end up being more profitable, but at the same time, they do not invest more, either in tangible capital or in R&D. Taken together, the increase in dominance of large firms is consistent with an increase in barriers to entry and potentially a decline in product market competition. This in turn hurts smaller firms and SMEs in particular. I believe that going forward, it is important to safeguard a consistent economic policy framework which would support the growth and development of SMEs along multiple channels. I also think that it is necessary to ensure that various policies complement each other and not interfere with each other. Just as an example, on the one side, government's broad suite of funded measures has been supporting small businesses across Canada, especially during COVID-19. On the other side, however, the existing legal environment for mergers and acquisitions has been quite lenient towards anti-competitive mergers. The existing Competition Act has been lacking clear guidelines as to what merger would be considered anti-competitive. The idea of examining the trade-off between efficiency gains and the competitive harm from the merger in order to determine whether a proposed merger should go through has also put consumers and small businesses at a disadvantage. I therefore welcome the recently proposed initiatives to amend and update the Competition Act in a way that better reflects today's unique challenges. Additional strategies aimed at reducing barriers to entry and costs of business operation that are particularly acute for SMEs can further promote growth. Reducing regulatory costs, which disproportionately hurt small businesses, could be one such strategy. Another approach could focus on providing small businesses with better access to labor capital, as again, SMEs have borne the brunt of COVID-related labor shortages. Finally, I believe that further academic research is needed to understand the drivers of the current trends in Canadian economic environment and their implications to SMEs. Establishment of research programs that could bridge between academic researchers on one side and agencies with access to granular data on the other side could create valuable new advancements with direct policy implications both to SMEs and the Canadian economy in general. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to your comments.
Merci beaucoup, professeur.
Thank you very much, Professor. I hand the floor to Ms. Aubon now.
And thank you so much for the invitation to be here today. We had a technical difficulty earlier this week or late last week, so I'm grateful for the opportunity to present today on the labor shortages and productivity of small and medium-sized enterprises across Canada. So my name is Dana Oborn, and I'm appearing on behalf of the Council of Canadian Innovators. We are a national business council, and we represent 150 of Canada's fastest growing companies. Our member companies are headquartered here in Canada and employ north of 52,000 employees across the country. Our market leaders in the sectors of health technology, clean technology, financial technologies, cybersecurity, and more. So after 2 years of the pandemic, there's never been a greater need to support SMEs in their adaptation and growth and competition in the global economy. And so the priorities I'm going to speak to today address SMEs and their ability to access talent, capital, and customers, and marketplace frameworks, a few pieces that Jelena actually mentioned as well in her comments. First, I'd like to brief you on the pressures facing domestic technology companies in Canada in their pursuit of attracting and retaining highly skilled talent. A recent report from the ICTC estimated that by 2025, Canada's digital economy will employ about 2.26 million Canadians. That's 11% of all employment in the country. But this is going to require an additional 250,000 jobs to be created over the next 3 years. CCI's members and Canada's scale-up companies are committed to creating many of the new jobs. However, they face a serious talent supply issue. Unfortunately, scale-up companies can't just maintain their workforce, they also need to grow rapidly. And by adding the best and brightest talent, this still remains a constant priority. A recent survey of CCI's members also found that most companies plan to increase their workforces by 20% this year alone, and that's an additional 10,000 more workers added to our economy by this year's end. For years, the shortage of skilled talent has been driving concerns for CCI member companies, but the recent shift to remote work has only exacerbated the problem. Canada's skilled workers are now part of a global labor market where geography is no longer as important, and our domestic innovators are finding themselves in fierce competition with global companies who can offer significantly higher wages for the same crop of skilled workers. This is driving up wage inflation, and earlier this year, CCI surveyed our members on this topic specifically and found that wage expectations have increased by 20 to 25% over the past year alone. This is not sustainable. In response to this, CCI recently tabled and released a talent and skills strategy with 13 key recommendations to meet the talent needs of our country's fastest growing companies. These recommendations speak to the need to increase generation, attraction, retention of skilled workers for Canadian firms. Through our national membership, we have strong insight onto how to address these challenges, including improvements to our immigration system and investments into upskilling and retaining programs across the country. And I look forward to engaging with you a little bit more on some of those ideas today. In addition to skilled labor shortages, there are several challenges that scale-ups are facing while trying to sustain their growth. So Canada's outdated intellectual property regime and SR&ED framework must be improved to better support SMEs. In the 21st century economy, intellectual property and other forms of intangible assets are the most critical sources of an economic advantage for firms and economies. And since 2020, we have continued to see a rise in the intangible asset space. Even as the pandemic winds down, the new wave of digitization, algorithms, patents, data, and other intangible assets will only become more valuable. To capture the maximum economic benefit from private sector R&D, it's essential that research and development be converted into commercial assets here in Canada. So this means that changes to the SR&ED tax credit could potentially allow for costs associated with protecting, defending, and prosecuting IP should be recognized as eligible expenses. This would send a powerful signal to businesses that generating IP through R&D is a fundamental component of the innovation process in Canada. However, SR&ED will only deliver the material long-term value to Canada if the IP flowing from these investments continue to reside and be commercialized for the benefit of Canada. CCI has several recommendations to better support Canadian IP and the SMEs who develop it, and I look forward to sharing some of them with you today. To conclude, with smart changes to existing strategies, the development of new measures where required, we can ensure that Canadian SMEs become leaders in the digital economy. Without this strong base of homegrown high-growth SMEs, we will not be able to generate economic growth, public wealth necessary, and pay for the public services that Canadians depend on. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Olborn. We'll now move to Mr. Boquist for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm here today wearing two distinct but complementary hats. First, I'm a local new car and truck dealer in Saskatchewan. And secondly, I am recently served as the national chair of the Canadian Automobile Dealers Association, CADA, during the pandemic crisis. These dual roles have given me unique insight into the challenges facing dealers nationally and locally. As a starting point, it is important to recognize that Canada is fortunate to have a network of over 3,500 franchise automobile dealers that sell and service new cars and trucks in virtually every community across Canada. Dealerships are not owned by factories, but each dealer invests all in on a locally run business that services their communities. Our dealers literally keep Canada rolling, and it's important to note that governments across Canada recognize the essential service our members provide by keeping our operations open during the pandemic. Most members of this committee will know that our dealers represent a vital sector of the Canadian economy, but may not know that we proudly employ 150,000 Canadians in well-paying jobs that build communities. Given the broad mandate of the committee's study, I will focus my remarks on three issues. Supply chain issues. The Canadian retail auto industry continues to be highly impacted by the worldwide supply chain issues. Given the highly integrated nature of the global supply chain and the microchip shortage, dealers and consumers in Canada have faced severe inventory shortages. It will take a long time for the auto supply chain to improve. It is important that the federal government is paying attention to factors that could stall the critical sector of consumer need. Not only have vehicles been delayed, but auto parts shortages have impacted consumers across Canada. Now is not the time for new policy measures that hamper economic recovery in our small business sector. Right to repair legislation. There has been recent attention paid to the issue of consumers' right to repair. It appears some are trying to leverage consumer outrage over cell phones and washing machines into competition legislation on vehicles in Canada. As a practical matter on the ground, I can tell you this makes little sense. Cars and trucks in my province are being repaired, and we never hear consumer complaints about the lack of access. In fact, vehicle consumers in Canada have been protected by a national voluntary agreement on right to repair since 2009. I would invite committee members to learn more about the Canadian Automotive Services Information Standards, otherwise CASIS. The agreement ensures that manufacturers share service and repair information with the automotive aftermarket industry to maintain an open, fair, and competitive repair industry for the benefits of all stakeholders and consumers. Transition to zero-emission electric vehicles. Canada has set bold targets for a future where electric and other zero-emission vehicles, otherwise known as ZEBs, will replace internal combustion engines vehicles by 2035. The transition to 100% ZEB sales will be a massive social societal transition that will require government leadership and programs as well as a shift in societal barriers. Again, I can tell you from the ground that this vision of 100% electric by 2035 will be really tough to achieve. On the positive side, the public should be encouraged by the impressive lineup of all new ZEVs that will be introduced in the next couple of years. Leveraging the existing Canadian dealer network will be vital for speedy adoption of ZEVs by Canadians. As with any new and unfamiliar technology, Canadian consumers will need to be educating on owning and operating ZEVs. Customers will also need comfort that they have a reliable Canadian-wide network of qualified service technicians to service their new ZEV in one of the world's harshest winter climates. This also includes performing valuable safety functions such as recalls. Clearly, for Canada to achieve the target of all the light-duty cars and passenger trucks sales to be zero emissions by 2035, more ambitious government action is required to enhance consumer incentives, invest in charging infrastructure, and create an electric vehicle battery supply chain. In closing, Canada's franchise car dealers look forward to playing a leading role in bringing the next exciting chapter in Canada's proud automotive history. Dealers will do what they have done for the last century, and that is selling and servicing automobiles that provide Canadians with reliable and affordable private transportation. Canada is a vast northern country, and our success economically as a society depends on working automotive transportation network. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll move to Mr. Ballingal for five minutes.
Good afternoon. I would like to begin my presentation by respectfully acknowledging that I am joining you from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan people. It is a pleasure to speak to the Canadian House of Commons Standing Committee on Industry and Technology today, May 10th, 2022, my 62nd birthday. I've been employed in the tourism and hospitality business since 1979. I've worked in restaurants, nightclubs, golf courses, and ski resorts for my entire career. In November of 1985, I began my career at Big White Ski Resort after the resort was purchased by an Australian family. I was invited to visit their resort in Australia, Mount Hotham, where I began a career with a working visa as a ski instructor. I met my wife in Australia. We moved back from Australia in 1995 with 2 kids, a boatload of furniture, and I've been employed as the Senior Vice President of Big White Ski Resort ever since. We currently experience over 660,000 skier visits and are the second most popular winter resort in British Columbia. I volunteer on many tourism boards, including advisor to the Canadian Ski Council, representing Canada's destination ski resorts. I'm a director of Tourism Kelowna, a director of the tourism industry of British Columbia, the president of the Tourism Big White Society, and chairman of the Thompson Okanagan Tourism Association. In this role alone, we represent over 3,500 stakeholders from Osoyoos to Valemount, the geographical size of the country of Ireland. As you are well aware, Supernatural British Columbia has been heavily impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. I would now like to share with you a number of points regarding labor shortages in the tourism industry and supply chain challenges. I understand that my time is short, so let me begin. Canada's tourism industry was amongst the hardest hit business sectors from COVID-19. Many have left their jobs during lockdowns, entering new fields, resulting in less Canadians to attract. Tourism was the first sector to be impacted and will be the last to recover. Pre-pandemic, the industry generated $105 billion in economic impact and employed over 1.8 million workers, as said by the Tourism Industry Association of Canada. Today, the tourism industry simply needs your help. By example, let me illustrate. The Crystal Cove Beach Resort in Tofino, British Columbia is a great example of how the industry has been impacted. Tofino bucked the trend and became the Hawaii for all Canadians as world travel was heavily restricted. The trend continues into the summer of 2022. Major challenges in labor is their number one issue. Many businesses cannot operate at full capacity, some as low as 50%, as no staff are available to work in the hospitality chain, including front desk and cleaning rooms. They have supply chain issues. In the town of Tofino, outdoor hot tubs are very popular. At this resort alone, they have 28 outdoor hot tubs that are highly sought after by the guests. It takes up to 10 days to get parts during pre-COVID times. Now it's up to 6 months. On a busy day, the town can expand from 2,000 to 10,000 people. Fresh stock of groceries and other hospitality items are in great demand because of supply chain issues. Let me give you an example about Whistler. You all know this world-class destination and home of the 2010 Olympic Games is something that Canada is very proud of. A prime example on a greater scale is how the industry is in peril. The delays in immigration, even including recent changes, has not filled the labor pool, and they were short up to 4,000 full-time equivalent jobs last winter. Today, I am told, and their studies will indicate, that Whistler will be short 5,000 to 6,000 employees this summer in a town of 14,000 permanent residents. The ski industry in Canada supports the Tourism Industry Association of Canada's and Tourism HR Canada's overall policy on improving the tourism labor force. However, the ski industry has specific challenges that must swiftly be addressed to solve this nation's problem. The ski sector relies heavily on foreign labor to support seasonal operation needs and hard-to-fill positions of housekeeping, culinary, lift operations, rentals, boot fitting, and ski school. Those trained hospitality professionals then go on to fill positions in the valley the resorts are located on top of in the summer months, including golf courses, wineries, hotels, restaurants, bars, marinas, day camps, and much more. For years prior and after the 2010 Olympics, visas were readily available for young people between the ages of 20 and 30 who could enter our country on multiple visits to work in the tourism and hospitality industries. We believe a return to these programs would have a profound beneficial impact on tourism industry immediately, and therefore impact small businesses coast to coast. Historically, the two federal recruitment streams that have supported the hospitality sector have been the Temporary Foreign Worker Program and the International Experience Canada Working Holiday. Ski employers report that International Experience Canada and Temporary Foreign Workers Program have been the highest utilized channels to fill positions, with 40% of full-time instructors having started off in these programs, then moving to become permanent residents. Industry recommendations are as follows. Immediately exempt Canada's tourism sector from having to fulfill the LMIA requirements until such time that revenue and employment levels match or exceed pre-pandemic COVID-19 performance levels. It should be noted that ski areas often placed within the LMIA zones that prevent the ski area from participating in current exemptions. For example, Banff is included along with Grand Prairie, Alberta, which is 685 kilometers to the north. The enormous paperwork and requirements for employers result in LMIA lapsing and having to start the process over again. Ensure there is dedicated representatives to support the needs of the hospitality and tourism sector and ski, and expedite the processing of applications by ensuring all applications advance through the review and approvals process in no greater than a 3-week time frame. Resorts such as Whistler, Sun Peak, Silver Star, Revelstoke, Kicking Horse, Fernie, Banff, Lake Louise, Tremblant, and Mount St. Anne, including Big White Ski Resort, all have large HR departments that have very familiar with the process and can benefit the smaller operators through their assistance in finding and training hospitality workers. It is evident through the hiring clinics that these...
Excuse me, Mr. Balingal, I hesitated because it's your birthday. I didn't want to interrupt. And on behalf of the entire committee, we wish you a very happy birthday. We're grateful to have you in this special day, but we're already 2.5 minutes over time. I would ask you to conclude briefly. Otherwise, I'm sure you'll get the chance through questions.
There you go. Thank you very much. Beginning with this year's ski season, introduced 2 years winter pilot project targeted attracting ski instructors in the industry. With a limited 2-year visa, we are losing these professionals to our trained Canadians to our competitors in Austria, Japan, and the USA. I will then conclude my statements.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll get plenty of questions. So we'll now move to our last witness for today, Mr. Naidu, for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members, and Michael, very happy birthday to you. Committee members, thank you for the invitation to present to the committee. I'm Rakesh Naidu, President and CEO of the Windsor-Essex Regional Chamber of Commerce. I'm presenting a Windsor-Essex perspective related to labor shortage and its impact on SMEs. My comments reflect what we are hearing from our industry associations and the frontline business community. Windsor-Essex is located at the heart of the richest consumer market in the world, where more than half of the North American population lives within a day's drive. The 10th largest market in the US, metropolitan Detroit, is less than 1 mile away just across the Detroit River. This unique geographical location makes Windsor-Essex an ideal location for trade. No wonder, of more than 1,000 manufacturers in Windsor-Essex, 90% of these are exporters. Windsor-Essex has a significant auto cluster, including OEMs and many large Tier 1 and Tier 2 suppliers. There are more than 3,000 acres of greenhouses in Ontario, and approximately 80% are Windsor-Essex, and 80% of what they produce is exported. From being the automotive capital of Canada, Windsor-Essex is fast evolving as the automobility capital of Canada. We recently attracted investment of $5 billion EV battery plant. Additionally, Stellantis also confirmed an investment of $3.2 billion in retooling the Windsor Assembly and Brampton Assembly operations. Stellantis also confirmed an investment to create 650 new R&D jobs at the Research and Development Center in Windsor-Essex. Amazon announced opening of a fulfillment center in the area and creating 300 new jobs. These recent announcements equate to approximately 4,000 new jobs by the year 2024. Not to mention the third shift coming back to the Windsor Assembly operation that will add a few more thousand jobs. Year 2024 will be a major milestone year for the Windsor-Essex region, not just for the reason mentioned, but it'll also be the year when the Gordie Howe International Bridge will get fully operational. The new international crossing will create further opportunities for business, specifically the logistics and transportation sector. While all the recent investments and upcoming opportunities give rise to a great deal of optimism for the region of Windsor-Essex, and I would say all of Canada, we are concerned that the labor shortage may not help us in tapping the full potential of these announcements and the jobs that are likely to be created. In a recent annual business confidence survey carried out by the Chamber Network in Ontario, 62% of businesses say their sectors are facing labor shortage. The situation in Windsor-Essex is very similar. This is further compounded by the aging population of workforce and retiring employers that don't have a good succession plan. We believe that immigration can provide much needed relief to some of the challenges mentioned earlier. The Windsor-Essex Regional Chamber of Commerce has been leading an initiative to launch a municipal nominee program that will identify the needs of the community and specifically the employers in the region and bring skilled and professional immigrants that will meet and match the needs of the employers. A proposal to do a pilot study was presented to the Ministry of IRCC. Another sector that has tremendous potential in the Windsor-Essex region is the logistics and transportation sector. The border crossing in Windsor-Essex is one of the busiest commercial crossings of North America. The importance of the border crossing was highlighted during the recent pandemic and the bridge blockade. The trucking industry moves approximately 2/3 of the $500 million worth of goods that cross the border on a daily basis. However, the industry is experiencing major challenges, and if not addressed, this will lead to further supply chain disruptions, increased costs of doing business, and rise in inflation. The two major issues affecting the industry are driver shortage. Currently, there are approximately 50,000 truckers short in Canada. And then the rising cost of doing business, specifically for the SMEs. Small businesses typically pay more for hiring, training, for insurance, and even for buying equipment. To address this, the Windsor-Essex Regional Chamber of Commerce recently successfully tabled a resolution at the OCC AGM calling for immediate measures to be taken to address some of the challenges. The proposed recommendations are increase immigration and bring internationally trained drivers, implement and adjust the driving requirements to allow new international truck drivers to fast-track their careers by considering their previous driving experience, and provide financial support to smaller fleet companies to offset the high insurance costs, offer competitive wages, and cover training and hiring costs. In closing, Inflation and labor shortage impacting all sides of businesses, but more so the SMEs. Supply chain disruptions adding to the inflation, but it is also a result of labor shortage. We strongly believe that addressing labor shortage through prudent long-term strategies such as municipal nominee program, attraction, and more importantly, retention of temporary foreign workers, international students, drivers and technicians, and the development of sector-specific training and micro-credentials will result in much-needed support for the various sectors. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Naidu. So colleagues, before we start the discussion, just two things to note. We have a hard stop at 5:30 tonight, and also Madame Auborn needs to leave at 5. So we'll start without further ado. Madame Gray, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. My first questions are for Mr. Ballingall, and I'd like to say happy birthday and thank you for joining us at the committee here today. I know that you represent many different organizations within the tourism industry, and tourism small businesses have seen labor shortage issues in our region, which are very significant. And I was wondering if you could touch on how much this has been impacting small and medium sized businesses in the Thompson-Okanagan area.
Well, the easiest way to explain that is let's take, for example, our business. We would normally employ between 200 and 235 ski instructors pre-COVID. 50% of those would be on working holiday visas, whether they be from Australia, New Zealand, or Europe. We teach what's called a GAP program, so we bring people from the Netherlands and the UK in to learn how to become ski instructors, and then they're available for us to sell a ski lesson to school children, to families, and to guests that visit our resort. The pandemic cut all that out. This year, we had just over 60 instructors, and we lost millions in revenue in ski school alone. You now push that out into the restaurant industry. We had vice presidents making beds this year. Normally, we would employ over 200 housekeepers. The best we had was 44. Now, that's Big White. You go to Whistler, which is one of the biggest economic engines in the tourism industry in Canada, millions of dollars a day in taxable revenue, and they were short 4,000 employees. They're looking to be short 5,000 employees for this summer alone. With 5.2% unemployment in Canada, these people are not readily available. And so what we're suggesting is to go back to the good times of 2010 when we invited people to come and work as part of the Olympic program. And those visa holders helped us support our tourism industry.
Great, thank you. And is that part of the International Experience Canada permit as well, meaning that, one sensible and easy fix from the federal government could be to extend these or to enhance these in order to help with the labor shortages?
Yes, we would recommend that they extend these past 2 years. I mean, it's very seldom that you'll get a ski instructor that will return on his second year once they get a level 2 or level 3 certification. They will sell their wares, for example, to the United States or Japan or to Austria. We're suggesting that 2 years would be great if there was more visas readily available. But if you doubled that to 4 to 6 years, you would find that there would be a lot less problems.
Okay, thank you. Now, we've heard on the other side from a competitive point of view that reports that the ArriveCAN app is causing delays or lengthening processing times at border checkpoints. And we're hearing that Canada is getting a reputation of being difficult to travel to. So do you think Canadian tourism is missing an opportunity to be as competitive as it could be as long as these different restrictions and processes are in place?
Yes, I would agree with that statement. Canada has literally the #1 tourist brand in the world. Destination Canada and Canadians alone are known for their hospitality, and don't forget we live in a country that has clean air, fresh water, beautiful mountains, beautiful prairie scapes, the east coast of Newfoundland, Labrador, polar bears to the north. We have something that no other country in the world has. The easier it is to the path to purchase, people now are selling commissioned travel holidays. The people selling those holidays will sell the quickest way that they can get the commission, no matter where the customer's going. They want to earn the money. If they have to spend time on the telephone or on emails suggesting how hard it is to enter Canada through the restrictions, through the through the apps, etc. We have known from the last year or 2 years that this has definitely affected those numbers coming into Canada.
Do you think that that should be a priority of the government right now, is to look at removing some of those processes in order to, because we know people with tourism, they don't book, necessarily for tomorrow, they're booking for months out, and to give people assurance and confidence in coming to Canada?
Yeah, in the real time, newscapes, look at the lineups that are happening at Pearson and Vancouver airports today. I mean, if the government was to meet and government officials meet with tourism professionals, airport professionals, we don't have all the answers, but we have some of the answers. Certainly, we would welcome the discussions as we welcome my participation to this committee today. We have been in this business a long time. We know what a tourist will expect. We know what they'll put up with, and we know what they won't put up with. And certainly the labor shortage is something that is got to be fixed quickly, or people are simply going to go somewhere else.
Mr. Bowling, I've just got time for one more quick question. This study does include red tape reduction, so I was wondering if you could touch on an easy fix the government could make right now to help reduce regulatory burden on small business.
Right now, the government of Canada welcomes agricultural workers from various countries to help our agricultural sector. Simply put those practices in place immediately. We could change this within a week. We could start welcoming young people that are willing to work in Canada, some that are trained that have been here before. I, in real time, passed a vineyard today that had 9 temporary foreign workers in the Quails Gate Vineyard, and they were doing an excellent job. There are thousands of them in the Okanagan Valley. We need thousands of hospitality workers now. That visa would work very well for us.
Thank you very much, Madam Gray. We'll now move to Mr. Dung for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I want to also wish Mr. Bollinger a happy birthday. Thank you for your very informative presentation. I want to dig a little deeper on your presentation with regard to the LMIA. My impression of the program was designed to eliminate possible competition between domestic skilled labor with foreign skilled labor. Is that still the case, or is that still effective given the circumstances right now, especially in your industry?
I can speak intelligently to the ski instructors using this program. It's not an effective visa program at all. In the country of Canada, we have approximately 25,000 certified ski instructors. Less than 10% of them are active ski instructors working in the field. We go to places like Australia, like the UK, like New Zealand. When they're in their summer seasons, we've been training instructors down there for some 25 years. Coming on the working holiday visas, where they could have multiple times in and out of the country, worked very well for us. When we went to the LMIA process, that particular person could only work as a ski instructor in the resorts. We couldn't use them to wait on tables. We couldn't use them to attend carnival nights. And yet they're a skilled hospitality guest service type person. And that visa program just simply didn't work for us. And a lot of the ski industry is no longer using it.
Thank you. That's good to know. And so was this the problem prior to the pandemic?
Yes. When it became, the cost of $1,000, pay for accommodation, pay for airfare, it just became too restricted.
Okay, gotcha. And throughout the pandemic, and especially towards the end, would you agree that the vaccination was a big part of the solution for us to kind of taper down on the infected population and peak at the hospitals? Would you agree with that?
We in the company that I work for, and certainly in our industry, believe in the science of vaccinations. And we believe that people visited our resorts in greater numbers because everyone in the resort they knew would be vaccinated. Everyone visiting the restaurants they knew would be vaccinated. And therefore, the confidence to visit the area was high. We also see that after the vaccinations mandates were lifted, that some of the counts have gone up in some places across the country. Certainly the United States is experiencing that more than we are here in Canada, but we're coming into our heavy summer, spring season, and the numbers are not going in the right direction for us.
Right. I'm actually quite worried about the tourism sector as you do, and especially when the summer is coming and it's sort of the high season for our SMEs to kind of make some recovery. The restriction at the border, as far as I know, right now, anybody who's vaccinated, there's no restriction. They could come to Canada. I believe that these that's the main purpose for the ArriveCan app, is to imagine if anyone at the border has to show various papers and whatnot, but if they can do that before at the they can enter the border. That will cut down the transition time at the border. So I just want to make that clear that ArriveCan was to filter those vaccinated from the unvaccinated. Would you think that would you say that that's sort of a smart move actually? Whether or not the technical part is working out, I think I just want to separate the issues into the technical part and the intent.
I think we would all agree that if you could get into Canada quicker using whatever technique and technical assets that you had in front of you would be best for all of us. We also all believe that coming to Canada as a vaccinated person would be better for all of us, but it's the technology that's getting in the way.
Okay,
and
thank you, sir. I want to move on to Professor Larkin. Professor Larkin, throughout the pandemic, we've seen reports now, large corporations like Loblaws have been accused of taking advantage of inflation to increase the price across the border and drive up the profit. And we've seen the historic profits being recorded. Do you think the large corporations have an unfair advantage in Canadian economy?
Absolutely. Increase in inflation and increase in prices has affected firms of all sizes, but I believe that large corporations could weather it much better and use the potentially
what would you suggest the government to do? What would you suggest the government in terms of policy? What can we do to mitigate that problem?
Are you asking about specifically mitigating inflation and transferring the increase in prices into consumers?
I think the behavior of the behavior of the large corporations and their market share and the historic profit. Should we do something about it?
Absolutely. I think it fits into this bigger picture that points to structural change and increasing power of large corporations that needs to be somehow addressed. Now, this is not an easy question. This is a great question, but not an easy one to answer, as I believe the solution has to stem from multiple channels and through multiple avenues. I have mentioned in my talk that, let's say, revamping of Competition Act may be one way to go about it. But overall, even given the Competition Bureau more power to prosecute even cases of, let's say, price fixing or false advertising, which unfortunately still exists and are fined quite lightly, could be another way to go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Larkin. We'll move to Monsieur Lemire for 6 minutes.
6 minutes, please, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. I'd like to start with Ms. Oborne from the Council of Canadian Innovators. The Council of Canadian Innovators tabled a strategy concerning management of talent comprised of 13 recommendations for the management, skills management and talent management. A number of concrete solutions. My first question, could you please elaborate first on those strategies, particularly those to do with attracting talent?
Certainly, and I hope it's okay that I'm going to be responding in English. So thank you again for the question. Talent attraction, I think, kind of spans a number of issues that can help alleviate some of the shortages in Canada right now. So unpacking a few of those recommendations, and I believe everybody on the committee received a copy of our recommendations in both French and English. But number one on attraction was to introduce a high potential tech visa. So this actually might be interesting as well for you, Michael, and happy birthday as well. This is really the idea of kind of giving the most in-demand professionals a path to Canada without a job offer in hand. And I just want to make note of this because at the time of the writing, we've actually seen this sort of piloted with the federal government on some of the solutions being offered now to Ukrainian nationals making their way to Canada. So there is a bit of a precedent here in offering an open-ended work visa. So that was one of the pieces. We also proposed the idea of launching a digital nomad strategy to make Canada a destination for growing remote workers. So as I mentioned in my opening comments, labor shortages mean a variety of things, but everybody is effectively working from home. And this is actually now turned into a benefit for many workers. So how do we attract some of that talent that may not be on Canadian soil? Reviewing and revising the national occupation classification, so the codes that effectively place individuals into certain categories of attraction and retention. The conversations with IRCC and ESDC have commenced, but that's, I think, something that needs to be expanded on and accelerated. Easing pathways to permanent residency. This is something that was talked about in several platforms in the previous election. We need to figure out what that actually looks like for international skilled labor coming to Canada with a guarantee that there's an opportunity to stay here longer term. Expanding the recognition of international and alternative credentials as well is something that we've talked about. So everybody learns differently now, and there's a different suite of education that takes place across the globe. So how do we encourage people who may not have exactly how we have identified talent, but companies who are looking to hire them here in Canada? And then finally, enhancing the global skills strategy immigration program. And we're optimistic that with the right service standard, that a targeted 48-hour visa processing time could be accomplished.
Would a change of the immigration program to increase labour be a way of filling the labour shortage and filling the pool? In your recommendations, you talked about global talent, and you said that by easing the pathway to permanent residency, that would be a good way to proceed. Should the government be focusing increasingly on that? We're noting that a lot of talent would like to stay in Canada longer, but aren't able to do so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. I will always say that there's no silver bullet to addressing this problem. 2 years ago, pre-pandemic, the circumstances were very different. I think the 13 recommendations that we put forward highlight a number of issues that could alleviate pressures that SMEs are facing right now when trying to find skilled labor. I think that platform commitments should certainly be followed through, and a commitment to easing pathways for permanent residency was a commitment made in the last election by the Liberal Party. But I think that there needs to be, a plethora of strategies approached, across the board. And this also includes, considering what some of the provincial nominee program numbers also look like in terms of expanding opportunities for provinces to designate where they feel that skilled labor needs to be channeled and into what sectors and industries.
You've proposed an additional stream, and that is for temporary foreign workers, as that's technological visas. And that wouldn't have any requirements for those applicants to have a firm job offer. Do other organisations believe that change is important? And has the government shown any interest in that recommendation to date?
Great question as well. Thank you. It's actually one that we've borrowed from the United Kingdom. It was sort of circling around in some public policy think tanks. Listen, we've had some really progressive conversations with MPs of all colors, and also with some of the folks on the government and civil service side. And certainly there is an openness to considering a strategy like this. And as I mentioned previously, there is sort of a precedent that's being set now with what's happening with Ukrainian nationals. And I do want to make sure that, I'm acknowledging that the two circumstances are very different, but this idea of expanding the pool of talent and skilled labor in Canada, I think will have great benefits for companies who are looking to fill roles and fill them quickly.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. In closing, I feel that the idea of a summit is a good idea, but it needs to be done in conjunction with the provinces because that's their bailiwick. Thank you very much. Mr. Lemire, thank you very much. The next speaker.
Chair, and thank you for our witnesses. Mr. Nadeau, I'm going to go to you first with regards to labor shortages on the border and also your supply chain challenges and disruptions. Maybe you can highlight a little bit the challenges we faced recently with the illegal border blockade and how that affected not only just large industry but SMEs, and also too how important it is to have supports for the border to actually get into the American market. I don't think people realize that there's about 38% of Canada's trade goes right through 2 basically kilometers in Windsor.
Thank you, MP Massey, and it's great to see you here. Thanks for the question. This supply chain is a very evolved, complex, and highly integrated supply chain that we have in North America, specifically when it comes to the automotive industry. This has been built over 100 years of work between collaborators, between companies that stretch on both sides of the borders, between states and between provinces. This is not something that's been built overnight, but the importance of that was very clearly highlighted during the blockade that we had. Every day, $500 million worth of goods crosses the Windsor-Essex border. That bridge that was blocked, about $350 million of goods crosses that border. This blockade put at risk not just the companies in the Windsor-Essex region, but the companies on both sides of the border, businesses that supply to auto assembly operations, not just in Canada, but also in US, and in many cases also outside of the North American continent. So that blockade had a major issue, not just because of what it did for the current operations and the assembly operations, and many of them were idled, but also the message that it was sending to our partners across the border that if this were to continue, or if this were to happen again, it would be a time to actually for them to look at sourcing some of the components locally and not really rely on Canadian businesses and Canadian supply chain partners. Hence, the risk was significantly more than just what the blockade resulted, which was the immediate ceasing of operations at some of the assembly operations. In terms of the supply chain, it is a well-known fact that a product, before it is fully assembled in one of the assembly operations on either side of the border, has traveled 7 times between the border. So that's the level of integration. There are many manufacturing companies on this side and in Canada and Windsor-Essex region. Many on the other side, they collaborate, the parts get assembled, they get processed, and then finally get assembled in the vehicle assembly operations, So this is a very evolved supply chain, and it justifies, the amount of effort that goes in terms of keeping the border open and ensuring that the Canadian economy is never put at risk. And it's something that we're very proud of, that Windsor-Essex plays an extremely important role in.
And being in from our area as well too, international students play a vital role not only just at our college and university and across this country. We've already heard testimony from a number of different witnesses about the challenge and I guess the lack of progress to get those individuals who are interested in remaining Canadian citizens actually into our labor market. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, we have about 640,000 international students now in Canada. Ontario attracts a significant number of them. Windsor-Essex is fortunate to have 2 great educational institutions that attract, a huge number of international students. while we do a great job of attracting them, we do a very poor job of retaining them. We make it very difficult for those that are here to find jobs. There are a limited number of hours that they can work. They have limited avenues to work, and there are many other constraints. We also make it very difficult for them to find a path to residency. We basically force them to work for someone else, even though they may have an entrepreneurial streak in them, even though they may have the wherewithal and the means to start their business. We actually negate all of that and we force them to work for someone else. In the process, many regions like Windsor-Essex lose these students because they tend to get jobs in larger metropolitan areas, and we not just lose them to employers on that, we lose them forever, and that's unfortunate part, because a region like Windsor-Essex, which is having a huge demand for workers, doesn't end up benefiting at all, even though we attract quite a lot of students here.
And there's been a noticeable trend with that even some of our traditional Canadians here are also being poached internationally because some are more working remotely and other types of opportunities. It would seem like we need to have a counter strategy to deal with that. And any thoughts in terms of how the government can help with that, or whether we should be looking at a counter strategy? Because what I'm hearing from a lot of employers right now is that they're looking at other areas than ever before, including Canadians that could actually work from Canada but actually be employed internationally.
Yeah, great point. And Dana actually, touched a bit upon this in terms of the digital nomad strategy. Very important. There's a growing number of gig workers in Canada, and I don't think we've created an environment where they can actually be gainfully employed, or they can, find an environment where they can really carry out their business or their work and be, at a place where they get paid fairly and have a good work experience. This is something that needs to be addressed. Plus, there are a lot of employees here in Windsor-Essex that have moved to this region post-pandemic because, it's still a great place in terms of cost of living. They don't work in the Windsor-Essex area. They work across the border. They work in Toronto and other places as far as California. We need to find a way to retain them and attract more. And, the provinces and the states on the other side of the border are also doing their best to lure them. So yes, we need to have a strategy on how to retain them and create an environment that better suits them. But we also need to find a way to bring the right kind of people and match the needs of the employers to those that are coming in. And one of the ways to do that is the municipal nominee program, which my Chamber of Commerce is spearheading here. That would be a very laser-focused approach to identifying the needs locally and filling the demands locally, rather than that being dealt at the federal level, where it could be a hit and miss. So that's another opportunity that I think we have not leveraged. And then finally, the temporary foreign workers. Again, we do a good job of bringing them in here, but the path to residency is very difficult for them. We end up not retaining a lot of them, and again, they have a lot of challenges while they're here in Canada.
Thank you very much, Mr. Naidu and Mr. Mas. We'll move to MP Cram for 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for joining us today. Mr. Boquist from the Driving Change Automotive Group, you spoke about supply chain issues being a problem for your business. I can understand, the supply chain issues that arose in the spring of 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic, but why are we seeing these problems linger, and can you expand a little bit on that for us, please?
Well, certainly, computer chips seem to be the biggest challenge from a new vehicle stocking supply. So what you're seeing is all kinds of automotive manufacturers that today a vehicle takes many chips to use all the functions within an automobile today, and those chips are in very, very tight supply. For many reasons, where they're produced, the fact that one of the factories burnt down. We've been slow in North America to be able to source that stuff here, and so everything's relied upon, from other areas of the world, and so that has dramatically slowed down the production of new vehicles. And, today I received word that, Ford Motor Company was idling more plants starting on Monday. So, those things really impact us. And then the other side of that is parts. So parts are sourced again throughout the world, and those parts roll in, and and we saw a bit of a slowdown in accidents amongst vehicles, when people stayed home for 90 days and didn't go anywhere. But as people have been back driving, those things have resumed, and so we're seeing a big impact in the auto collision sector where we're unable to get parts to repair. And then, as you know, that we're also seeing an impact on being able to get parts to repair for servicing and things, and that impacts companies, impacts individuals where they're not able to get the vehicles repaired in a timely fashion in order to put them back to work or use them in their personal lives. And so it's caused significant issues within the daily lives of Canadians and certainly within our industry.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Boquist. And Mr. Chair, I'd like to be sharing my time with Monsieur Genereux, so I'll hand things over to him.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, and thanks to the witnesses. Mr. Bellinghall. My brother Luke says hello and wishes you a happy birthday too. He worked this year at your ski resort. My sister has a chalet, a cottage. I understand what you're experiencing. I was in Banff a couple of weeks ago, as well as in Jasper, and we have met a number of young people who were there for 2 years, who came from Australia and other countries, as well as other Canadian provinces. When you're young, you're more likely to travel and be adaptable and work in other locations and other provinces, like in Canada's West. Now, those young people told us, unlike what the industry stakeholders have told us, is that it's quite easy to get their hands on temporary work permits for 2 years to work in that industry. Would you agree with, for example, considering an expansion of that 2 years so that it can be extended to more years so that they can stay even longer?
We don't hear you because you're. I think your mic is.
Hello, and thank you to your good wishes and to your brother as well, an outstanding service professional at our resort, to say the least. And I know he's enjoying his time back in Quebec and on the farm. I am proof of what a 10-year visa process can do for a family. I went over to Australia as an instructor on a working holiday visa. And once I grew to like it so much, I increased my credentials, went back and forth for a number of years, and became a permanent resident of Australia. Met my wife there, had 2 kids there. And then when the family that owned Big White Ski Resort became Canadians, the father retired and the son took over, and he invited me to come back in 1995. Since that time, visa workers and working holiday young people, they only have 2 years with us now. They used to have a longer period of time, and Canada being what it is, they worked in the mountains, they worked in Ontario, they worked in the sugar shacks of Quebec, and they traveled around the country because they had a visa that could take them back and forth. They fell in love, and whether they moved to their home country or stayed here, there is thousands and thousands of examples of this. When you only have a 2-year restriction, the visa holder still wants to travel. So they're not going to stay in your sector or with your company, in our case, for more than 1 season, and then they're going to move on, and then they're going to go to our competitors and competitor companies, take that great training from Canada that the Canadian industry is known about, and benefit that other country. I agree with your comment. I don't 100% agree with what the people that you ran into. It has been terrible to get a visa to come to work in Canada up until 6 weeks ago. It took anywhere between 3 to 4 months, sometimes as much as 8 months. We just simply missed the opportunity for the last 2 years when people could travel. They couldn't get their visa in time to make their entry. Now it's getting better. We understand what's going on in Afghanistan. We understand what's going on in Ukraine. We understand that the immigration department is overloaded and that it takes people to process these things. What we're saying is that you have a respected industry that is with you on this, that know the process. Give us a chance to help you process. And we think that with the extension of the visas and the visa time allotments, that we could help solve this crisis immediately.
Thank you, Mr. Balingal. Monsieur Généreux, malheureusement, c'est tout le temps.
Unfortunately, time has run out. I'll hand the floor to our colleague for 5 minutes.
To all the witnesses for making time. My first question is for Mr. Kotick. Thank you for making time for the committee. So you spoke about social media and cybersecurity. So I come from a family that also owns a small business. It didn't utilize social media, but it did keep a lot of its information online. Actually, all the data, really, sales, purchasing. One of my family members was computer savvy, and so he was able to protect that data. What options do small businesses have in relation to the data that they keep online and cybersecurity in general?
So that's a very interesting question, because we have to first understand what type of data is actually generated by these businesses. So let's just look at a business in whole, and most of us might think of social media, or we might think of online sales, but it's a lot more than that. You got employee records. You have information relating to your intellectual property. You have documents. You have financial related information. If you're in the healthcare sector, you got health related information. And all that information has to be stored somewhere. And I think the big issue, especially when it comes to small businesses, is do they have adequate protections in place, or are they aware around adequate protections to ensure that customer, employee, financial, consumer, customer data is actually being protected and secured. I think the best way to kind of think about this is it's not just a checkbox exercise. I think, and this is what adds to the layers of complexity. And I like to use the example. I think most of us here might have, I think all of us have smartphones, and we go into the App Store, whether it be the Google Play Store or our App Store on the iPhone, and you get these updates for all these apps. And you think to yourself, are these new features? No, actually, 9 times out of 10, they're security updates. And it just goes to show you that it's such a dynamic situation here. And if you don't stay up to date, it means you're vulnerable. So security, cybersecurity in particular, cannot be a checkbox exercise. It must be continual. And in order for it to be continual, it requires investment.
Great, thank you. So you mentioned the Small Business Hub. What role does that play in cybersecurity, or what role could it play?
So I think the Small Business Hub is essentially, if we think about the red tape, if we think about the complexities that small business owners have to go through, let's just take a independent farm. I was surprised to know that there was over 1,000 registered independent farms in the Ottawa region alone. And these farms produce products. They might produce, let's just take the example of they grow their own berries and make jam. So these jams now need to be sold somewhere, and it's not as simple as just taking an item and putting it online or going and selling it. There's a lot of complexity. For example, there's labeling related issues. There's business registration. There's insurance. There's shipping, for example. So I think we've all gone through this where we go to purchase something online, and we get to the checkout and it says shipping is now $30 or $40, and we think, well, wait a second, I'm going to exit the shopping cart. And I think, in comparison to big box organizations, you'll get to a checkout and it'll be free shipping, $5. How can small businesses actually compete? So this is where I think this Small Business Hub becomes essential. It becomes a one-stop shop where small businesses, entrepreneurs can actually go there, get access to experts, whether it be from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency on labeling requirements, whether it be Canada Post on shipping requirements, whether it be other public-private partnerships of organizations that are there to help small businesses succeed. Instead of what it is right now, which is, as I mentioned, it is a reactive enforcement model compared to a proactive support model. So I think that's where that Small Business Hub becomes extremely important.
Great, thank you. Chair, just time, do I have?
You're almost
No? Okay.
40
Thank you.
seconds. Thank you very much. So we'll now move to Monsieur Lemire pour 2 minutes 30.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. My question is for Mr. Boquist, to do with regulated markets, and I'd like to cite Daniel Breton. If we look at how things are happening in the world, most electric vehicle sales platforms are regulated. Canada is not regulated, or hasn't been to, and the percentage of the sales of 100% electric vehicles was 90%. Now look at the sales in November and December in Europe and in China. The percentage was about 20%. In Germany, 30%. In Norway, 90%. In all of the countries where the market of electric vehicles was regulated, there's been an increase in the sale of electric vehicles. Have car salespeople looked at the ecosystem in which this very lucrative market is developing, and they're going to lobby governments to lift regulations and offer subsidies to increase sales?
I'm not sure I fully understand your question. I guess I believe you're saying that Canada should regulate electric vehicle sales, and that would lead to a higher adoption. Is that what you're basically saying?
Well, yes. More countries and governments are generous. California is an example. The more countries are generous such that consumers will buy electric vehicles, well, then the availability of electric vehicles becomes palpable. California doesn't have to promote it because there are so many already on sale. The problem in Quebec is that there is a huge shortage. Look, you only need to see what's occurring in Quebec and the shortages. So is that one solution? That is so that Canada is much more open than it currently is, either by tax credits or regulation?
Yeah, I think there's many things that influence that, and you've got a higher adoption in places where the weather and the availability and all those things play into that, and certainly cities across Canada such as Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, maybe Calgary would have a higher adoption. I think one of the things we have to be very aware of is that the technology needs to significantly increase for countries like ourselves where we have a significant colder climate. And so you've got range anxiety amongst those things. You've also got the charging network. Canada's a big country. And so when you start looking at the number of people that live in California, which is really the whole country in an area significantly smaller than our country, I think you're going to have a higher adoption in a lot of different places. I suspect that you will see adoption sort itself out as technology increases, as the infrastructure gets in place for charging and all those kinds of things. But I think those things are a ways away in order to actually fulfill the requirements that'll be necessary. So I'm not in favor of more regulation on anything. I think our country has a lot of regulation already, and I don't think it needs any more.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Mas.
2 minutes and a half, Mr. Mas.
Continue with that. Mr. Boquist, is the Driving Change Automotive Group, it's just your Ford dealerships, is that correct?
Yeah, I have 4 dealerships in Manitoba and Saskatchewan.
Okay, so I actually drive a Ford Bronco, but I'm also the author of the original CASIS agreement, the volunteer agreement that was put in place over 12 years ago. The U.S. Federal Trade Commission is making right to repair a priority. I've talked with OEMs that are actually understanding that the current situation needs to be updated because digital software and ZEVs were not part of the original discussion. And as well, too, your former Canadian CEO, Mondragon, was key, in fact, because Ford was not treating Canadian customers the same as American customers. So is it your position that the current agreement that's 12 years old is sufficient, whereas everyone else is understanding that there needs some type of modernization? I know the Liberals have a bill on it, the Conservatives have a bill on it, I have an automotive bill on it. Just wondering where you're laying on that, because that doesn't seem to be the trend.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, our CADA probably would be able to give you a more thorough explanation around that. We believe it does need to be modernized. It does need to be updated. We just don't think we need to have a whole new piece created. We think what's there has some good bones, and it just needs to be updated for the current climate that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, because there's some even that don't even opt into it. It's not mandatory. So, for example, Tesla is not even participating in the current agreement, and we have some others. So this is a major problem, and it's a major issue. So thank you very much for your testimony today.
Thanks. Merci, Monsieur Mass. Monsieur Deltel, 5.
Mr. Deltel, 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen across Canada. Greetings.
You talked about having proactive support model to be more proactive to support our businesses to address the reality today. So do you have any idea of that? You said at the end of your comment that you will have some suggestion to be more proactive. So what would you like to say to us on that?
Thank you so much for your question. I think that just as I answered in the last question, I think what it is, we just have to make it easier, a one-stop shop for small businesses to meet the regulatory and compliance requirements. Is it fair for a small business owner to really understand the complexities around doing business and thus making being competitive? So what are some of those complexities? I think labeling, for example, as I mentioned earlier, it is very difficult to really understand all the nuances when it comes to labeling. I think, I was looking for a bottle of something that I can show, and you can see all the markings, clearly English, French, but something as small as the barcode on it as well, the size of the barcode, the registration of the barcode. You have the first 5 or 6 digits are actually registered, and then you have the product number, the way the ingredients are listed. Is it a primary or a secondary ingredient? There's so many things and nuances there. So one of the suggestions would be is that I am a small business owner and I want to get a product to market. I have this great idea for a jam, for a tea, for whatever widget, or I guess food item, let's say that I've created. I should be able to get the support that I need without having to do what the current situation is, which is hire tens of thousands of dollars in leverage in consulting fees to only get some suggestions and then present create that label and present that product to the market. The challenge is when you try to be proactive, and I personally dealt with this, where when you call the CFIA and say, I have this product, I have this label, I need some advice, there's no mechanism set up to provide that advice. It is, sorry, we will only provide if there's a complaint, if there's some enforcement that needs to be taken. By that time, you've created all these labels, you've created all these products, you have the product in the market. Now you're looking at a recall, you're looking at potential enforcement. So the small business hub, essentially, if we had the resources there, you'd be able to get that advice right then and there. In addition to that, you'd be able to get advice on setting up your business, on being more competitive, networking with other local businesses as well. And the other issue around shipping. I think that Canada Post, for example, should have a stake in a small business hub. And the reason for that is if I want to get a product from Ottawa to Mr. Ballingal in Okanagan Valley, we know that is going to be extremely expensive. We all know that if we go to Canada Post to ship it. Should that be the case? Should we not have small business shipping credits, for example, that could be tied right into that business, from Canada Post? So now I got X amount of thousands of dollars that I can apply. So now I can compete. I won't get the preferred rate if I don't have volume. I'm not going to have volume if I'm going to charge somebody $40 for shipping that widget across the country. So there has to be a better way, and I think the better way is if we amalgamate some of these resources to provide that support, we'll be able to go from 0 to 100 a lot faster. Thank you. I hope that answers your question.
Non, il reste 1 minute.
You have 1 minute left.
For Mr. Bengwal in BC, it will be a good gift for his birthday. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup sur ces paroles sages.
Thank you very much on those wise words. I'll hand the floor to Mr. Erskine Smith.
Thanks very much. I want to spend some time, Professor Larkin. I really appreciate your remarks. And just so I'm clear in relation to concentration of market power and the efficiencies defense, for example, in the Competition Act, is it your view that when the Competition Commissioner looks at the efficiencies defense as an example, that they aren't taking into account the longer-term challenges to efficiencies for the economy writ large as it relates to market concentration?
Well, I believe that the existing focus on efficiency is a bit weird because, first of all, when you think about efficiency gains, they apply first and foremost to the company owners or the shareholders. If anything, it may hurt consumers, it may hurt, it may lead to some employment cut. So there may be some negative consequences as a result. Another aspect that I find problematic is that when you consider this trade-off between efficiency gains and potential losses due to increase in market power, the efficiency gains are typically the ones that are easy to quantify, because essentially, if you are a company that proposes a merger, and as a part of the merger you can reduce some duplicate operations, you have the numbers right in front of you, how much you're going to save, and you're going to save it relatively in the short term. As opposed to that, it's much more difficult to quantify the long-term applications to consumers, to the labor force, and so on. And they also, as you correctly mentioned, they happened in the longer term. So
well, exactly, because in your remarks, it may be that there are efficiencies by, in some cases, reducing staff and avoiding duplicative IT systems or otherwise. But in the longer term, you've suggested that more concentration may mean more profitability for the existing players, but certainly less R&D, and ultimately Canadian consumers are likely worse off as a result.
Correct. So essentially what ends up happening that even an efficient merger is not a guarantee that the merged entity will not exercise its market power in the long term. In fact, both can happen.
And with respect to that market power, when we see a country like Canada, which strikes me as a country of oligopolies, we see in the telecommunications space, in the banking space, in the grocery space, more like a monopoly in the cinema space, but you go through sector by sector by sector, and we have high concentration. You've identified the Competition Act reform as a serious answer to that, and I think in your paper, it's not only weak antitrust in the United States, but weak antitrust in Canada that's led to concentration in both jurisdictions. When you identified additional strategies to lower barriers to entry, can you speak more specifically to what we can recommend in relation to reducing some of those barriers to entry, and is it sector specific?
Well, I think additional barriers to entry can relate to anything that reduces the burden on small firms, because if you think about regulation, if you think about even the current environment, increasing inflationary pressure, labor shortages, all that affects small corporations, small firms disproportionately more than it affects larger firms. So I think everything that can correct this bias can help small businesses and in the long term economic growth.
And it strikes me that based on your analysis, I don't know, a highly concentrated industry like telecommunications becoming even more concentrated would probably be a bad idea,
yeah? Overall, yes. I mean, more analysis is needed to figure out why exactly this happened. But overall, yeah, concentrated telecom industry that also controls infrastructure and potentially provides, maybe also controls some information, can provide barriers to entry for others.
My last question is in relation to the comparison as between the United States and Canada, because I understand from your research that there are increasing levels of concentration over the last 2 decades in both jurisdictions, but we also see in the United States a significantly higher business expenditure on R&D. And do you have anything that might explain why, despite high levels of concentration in both jurisdictions, there's such a significant productivity, I think, lag in the Canadian context?
This is a good question. Well, first of all, I want to mention that even in US, despite the overall trend of increase in R&D, still, when you detrend this information, you see that there has been a decline in investment, both in tangible assets and R&D. Unfortunately, Canada has been lagging behind on this technological aspects. I don't have a good answer as to why this may happen, but definitely the current environment does not help it, because the increasing gap between the leaders and the laggards prevents knowledge dissemination, prevents technological dissemination, and can essentially make the situation much worse.
Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all our witnesses today. It was very interesting, and I think that there are excellent recommendations that will come from your testimony. We'd like to thank you again. Once again, a happy birthday to Mr. Balingal, and this meeting is now adjourned. Good afternoon, everyone.